So with Catholic Charities and some of the properties as well as shelters, I'm curious, are people allowed to use drugs? How does crime operate within the specific properties? And are there rules about those things, or are there any consequences, or does Catholic Charities just allow that to happen?
You know, it's one of the big mythologies of Catholic Charities is that anything goes in our buildings and in our shelter. There's no rules at the House of Charity. We just let people come in and shoot up and use drugs and do whatever they want. And same thing in our housing. That's been said around the community for years. It is 100% false. We absolutely have all those rules in all of our buildings. And the reality is that we have a lot of staff in these buildings to make sure that doesn't happen. House of Charity is a low barrier shelter. We take anyone in any condition. Even if you're actively using, even if you're actively off your meds for mental health, we will welcome you in as long as you respect the staff, the facility, and the rules. And the rules are you cannot drink or do drugs in our buildings. You cannot fight. You cannot bring weapons. You cannot disrespect the staff or threaten violence to anyone. And if you do, we put you out of the building. Now, we'll give you a chance to come and sit and talk to our sanctions committee and talk your way back in and apologize, and we often let people come back in. But if they're doing those things, they cannot be in our shelter. In housing, it's a housing first model, so some people move into those apartments and they are still doing some self-harm activities, especially with drugs and alcohol, but they agree to engage in services in the building. We have substance abuse counselors and mental health counselors in those buildings, and the residents are expected to engage in those services. Now, they don't have to. That's against the law. We can't force it. But if they don't engage in those services, and the first time they break one single house rule, which if you're using in our apartment, you will break a house rule within the first week. As soon as you break one, we sit down with you and say, hey, you broke the rule. Now you have to come and talk to our substance abuse counselor if you want to stay in your apartment. And they say yes. That's why we have a 93% success rate in that housing, which is important. But we absolutely have rules in all of our shelters. We're sitting in one of our homeless shelters right now. Drugs are not allowed in this building ever. If you get caught with drugs one time, you are exited from this building. And that's true in all of our facilities and in all of our shelters, and has been true for 50 years. And yet the narrative in the community tends to be, well, anything goes at Catholic Charities. They could just come in here and do whatever they want. Not the case. If you're in our building and you commit a crime, guess what we do? We call the police, just like you would do if someone committed a crime at your house.